tell us about this contract from the American people. What is the contract? What lay it out for us, sir?
Well, the contract is similar to what Newt Gingrich and the Republicans did in '96 when they had a contract with America that if they got elected again, they would get certain things through Congress to get voted on. They couldn't guarantee them being passed. This contract is similar to that. We have, when I crisscross America and I talk to people, they say, Joe, our vote doesn't count. Well, I want people to vote, and I want you to know your vote does count. But it's mind-boggling that one vote, it seems that's just over the top. So we think that if we collect 5 to 7, maybe even 10 million votes, well, it's so important because we need to pool together millions of votes to sway this election. We have a unique situation in our election this year. Normally, 2 or 3 million votes would not be that big, but if you look at it today, this America is so divided, so split, that we have the opportunity to get enough people together to sway the election. But we want to do that. I actually want to get a commitment from one of the 3 candidates that will actually embrace this contract, and this will help America get back on their feet.
Right. Okay. So now, what are the key tenets of this contract from the American people? Right. So, from what I understand, one of the big things that you're focused on in here is reducing the national debt, actually getting our national debt under control. My God, what a novel concept, right? Like, I mean, why don't we see our Republicans in Congress clamoring to do that instead of taking away our Fourth Amendment rights like they did yesterday? Sir, what say you? What lay out for us the various tenets and the various pillars of this contract?
Well, this contract it has 10 things. One is reining in the spending. One is setting up a mechanism to help control the spending for a long term. We have to bind Congress with a constitutional amendment that will make them do certain things, make them have a budget on time, make them stay on budget, because obviously they're not going to do it. They're just going to continue to grow this debt. There's a whole lot of things here, from securing the border to reining in our costs, so we'll make sure we don't let Social Security run out. That would bankrupt 68 million people in this country, double the poverty rate overnight. We've got so many things that all tie to the debt. Understanding that this country has a lot of problems, but if we don't control our debt, get this thing under control very shortly, then the other things will overcome us anyway.
Right. Okay. So, can you lay out for us, sir, your background? Because you have a pretty storied career in business, so you kind of get this, right? Like, and I wish the politicians would listen to people like you. Can you lay out for us how you kind of got to where you are? How did you start this Joe from Texas thing? Because this isn't, you've built the whole business in your whole career, right? Like the map business. I'm forgetting it off the top of my head. But lay out for us your background, sir. How you got to this point where you were engaging on this stuff.
Well, I started out at 7 years old on Social Security when my father had a bad stroke, so I know how important Social Security is to America. And then I've been blessed over the years to get an education through 12 years of high school and went into the construction. I've got 50 years, maybe 50 years in this business. But, businesses and banks and all of us operate under one set of rules. The government operates under another set of rules. America borrows money to buy a car, a house, or whatever. They have to pay for it. America borrows money to do just about anything, start a business, but we have to pay it back. The government borrows money and never pays it back. They guard our bank. They watch over our banks to make sure we safeguard depositors' money, but nobody's watching over them. They're not safeguarding our money. They have run us off in the ditch, and nobody wants to man up to them, and we need 5 to 7 million votes to change this election and make sure that people go. The most important thing, if people get nothing else out of this call, is go to joefromtexas.com, read our contract, sign it. Let me have the power of a lot of votes to sway this election.
Right. So Mr. Penland, can you lay out for us, Joe Penland Sr. is our guest. The website is joefromtexas.com. Can you tell us, have you had conversations with top Republicans? One would think that many of the Republicans, because this is very similar to Newt Gingrich's contract with America, that they would sign on to it. Have you talked to senators, congressmen, candidates, et cetera? Are people agreeing to sign on to this? What's the Um, what's the reception been?
Well, I've had excellent reception, obviously, with Newt Gingrich. I've had lunch with
Hmm.
him. I talked to him several times on the
Hmm.
phone, and I asked him how they did what they did to balance the budget 4 times with Bill Clinton, pay it down twice. And he said, Joe, we were standing on Ronald Reagan's shoulders. It made a lot of sense because Ronald Reagan came into office when we had a bad problem with our economy. He left when things was a whole lot better. He was America's president. I have visited with Burgess Owens, Vivek Ramaswamy. I've been to his house, did a podcast with him. He's got
Hmm.
similar views. He says whenever your debt is to the point that it's more than what you're paying for your national defense, you're a downward spiral, and that's exactly where our economy is right now. We continue to get worse every day, every minute, every second, and it looks like the administration and Congress, nobody wants to look at this and take this on, but it's fixing to take the country completely out. When you're $35 trillion in debt, predicted to go to 54 trillion in 10 years, there's no way we can keep this up. All the money we pay in will go for interest. Your tax dollars will go to another country.
Yeah, what's crazy is what I remember. I remember when the national debt was like $15 trillion or $16 trillion, and everybody was freaking out about how terrible it was. We're in the 30s now, and we're going up way higher than that, and it's not getting better. And frankly, I mean, look, if you listen to the generals, I mean, they'll tell you the biggest national security threat in the long term is the national debt, right? Because our adversaries can call it on us, right? Who holds the debt? It's the Chinese Communist Party, right? Like so, the fact is that I mean, they've got us cornered, and we're not doing anything about it. And frankly, I mean, so when you see what happened like yesterday in Congress, or like a couple weeks ago, yesterday when they did the FISA thing, or when you see a couple weeks ago with the government funding thing, right? Like, look, I spent the whole first half of this hour talking about Speaker Johnson. I think he's a nice guy personally, right? Like, I think he wants to do the right thing. I think he's so naive, right? Like, I think he's got to learn from people like Speaker Gingrich, like yourself, like other people out there across the movement. So if you had one piece of advice for Speaker Johnson, Mr. Penland, what would it be? What would you tell him that he needs to do right now to get back on the right track? To get back on the right track,
Well,
off this wrong track that he's on.
well, I have met with him briefly, but yes,
Mhm.
he's got such a load on him. With the
Yeah.
the cards stacked like they are, that only one person can ask to have him step down. Like we're in uncharted waters. We're that divided. The country has to see that we're so divided that not just Democrat, Republican, we're divided in the Republican Party. That is
Mhm.
so sad, and we've gotten ourselves into this situation where nobody wants to take a stand. And he's doing for the short period of time he's been in there, he's doing a good job. He doesn't want to give up money unless we see where we can pay for it. And I would think that any administration and any president, when a bill comes to the president's desk, first question is, how does this help America? Second question is, how do we pay for it? If we can't answer those two questions, put that one in the garbage. Don't use it. Don't do it. And that's what we keep putting this pork into every bill that has nothing to do with the problem that we're trying to solve. And we do that just to get it passed. That is so unfair to do that to the American people, to tack some extra charge on what we need. And that's what's happened. That's why our government owes $35 trillion, and that's why we owe it to countries. And you made a good point right there. We owe it to countries that are not friendly to us, that don't like us. That is the worst thing you can do. Borrow money from your enemies. We were
Right.
warned about debt from Washington when he left office, Eisenhower when he left office. Donald Rumsfeld, the day before 9/11, said that the Pentagon owed $2.3 trillion they couldn't account for when they had a $300 billion budget. We're totally out of whack on money, and we just continue to spend it like there's no tomorrow. Well, tomorrow's just about on us.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to ask you here is that okay, so to bring this all full circle, we see this playing out right now with the student loan debate, right? Like Joe Biden just wants to, maybe wave a magic wand and say all this student loan is forgiven, right? Like, but the thing that I think is really illuminating about that is that it the the fact is that the money was spent by people who went to college and got these various degrees. Whether or not they're useful is a different question. But the fact is that they owe the money, right? Like to for this. Somebody's gonna pay for it. Who's gonna pay for it? The regular people, right? Like the taxpayers, right? Like are gonna pick up the tab on that. But what that demonstrates, I think, is the same thing with the national debt, right? It's not like this is money that they can just create out of thin air, right? Look, it's somebody is holding the debt and somebody's gonna pay for it, right? Like that's how it always happens, right? So the again, similar type of a thing. These foreign countries are holding the debt right now with the United States, and they're going to. I mean, they have us cornered. They have leverage on us, right? Because they hold our debt, right? Like, and they could call it. So, I mean, what say you about that when you look at this like student loan debate that's playing out right now? And what Biden's doing on that front, and kind of lay out the contours and connect it back to this broader discussion for us.
Well, what Biden's doing with the votes, that's to get votes. When you're going to forgive debt, that's to get votes. He did that in the midterm, and now he's doing it again. I mean, that America's not. We're not naive. We may not be all from the same college or whatever, but we're not. We know what's going on. We can see through that. And you're right. When Japan and China is your two largest holders of our debt, that's what spooked Ross Perot in '92 when he came out of his comfort of being a businessman here in Texas and threw his hat in the ring to run for president. $4 trillion is where we were at. He said it was unsustainable. You'll be at 36, maybe 37 when Biden finishes his first term. 9 times that. You can't buy enough votes to keep covering this up. Sooner or later, you have to pay your bills. You pay yours. America pays their rent, their house note. They buy their groceries, pay their car note. They all pay when you borrow money, you owe it back. Somebody else shouldn't pick up your tab.
Yeah, pretty incredible stuff. Joe Penland Sr., the group is Joe from Texas. Where can people go? Again, give out that website. Where can people go to learn more about this effort and sign on to the contract from the American people if they so choose?
Well, thank you so much for letting me be on today, and hopefully many, many more Americans will go to joefromtexas.com, sign this contract, and let's show these 3 candidates that we understand what's going on and we want it changed. And God bless.